They didn't rob a bank. They ran one of the biggest cable companies in America, and they robbed it. Not strangers. A father and his own sons, quietly draining the public company they were supposed to protect. One golf course, one private jet, one hidden loan at a time. Prosecutors would later say they treated it like a private piggy bank. $2.3 billion in debt, hidden. And the man at the head of the table built the whole thing from almost nothing. And that's what makes this one hurt. This wasn't a Wall Street shark. John Rigas was the son of Greek immigrants, a small-town man who got his start with a cable franchise that cost a few $100s and spent 50 years building it into an empire that reached more than 5 million American homes. He gave money to his town. People trusted him, and then he and his sons took that trust and spent it on themselves until the whole thing collapsed and the founder was led out in handcuffs at the age of 80. This isn't tabloid. It's on the record. In July of 2002, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged Adelphia and the Rigas family with what it called one of the most extensive financial frauds ever to take place at a public company. The government laid out the hidden debt, the sham documents, the money spent, line by line. What follows comes from that filing, from the trial that followed, and from the company's own collapsing stock price. We'll start with the heist itself, how a public company became a family checkbook, then how one immigrant built the empire they looted, then the collapse, and finally, the reckoning, and why this quiet fraud helped change the law for every company in America. Start with the mechanics, because the genius of this fraud was that it was boring. Adelphia was a public company, owned by ordinary shareholders, but the Rigas family still controlled it. And running quietly alongside it were the family's own private companies and a family trust. Between them ran something called co-borrowing. Adelphia and the family entities would take out loans together, jointly. On paper, the family was supposed to pay its share. In reality, the debt landed on Adelphia, while it was hidden from the very statements shareholders were reading. Here is the number at the center of it. According to the SEC, between the middle of 1999 and the end of 2001, the family caused Adelphia to fraudulently hide more than $2.3 billion in bank debt by shifting it onto off-balance sheet affiliates the family controlled. Debt that was really the company's, made to disappear from the company's books. And when the numbers still didn't add up, the SEC says they created sham transactions backed by fake documents to make it look like debts had been repaid when they'd only been moved. And it wasn't only the debt. To keep Wall Street happy, prosecutors and the SEC said the company inflated the numbers that mattered most in cable: how many subscribers it had, how much of its network it had upgraded, and its earnings. They were manufacturing a healthier company than the one that actually existed. A hidden mountain of debt underneath and a painted-on picture of growth on top. Now the part that turns a fraud into a betrayal. Where the money went. This wasn't debt taken on to build a better company. The SEC laid out what family money bought. Undisclosed stock purchases made with company funds. Luxury condominiums in Colorado, in Mexico, in New York City. Timber rights on land in Pennsylvania. And, most famously, a private golf club built for the family with $12.8 million of the company's money. Reports at the time added the almost cartoonish details. Company cars and even Christmas trees paid for out of a public company's accounts. And when it started to unravel, when Adelphia finally admitted in March of 2002 that billions in debt had been left off its books, they didn't stop. The SEC says that even after the confession, the family secretly diverted $174 million more of the company's money to pay off their own personal loans. Prosecutors would later prove that, in total, the family took roughly $100 million purely for themselves. That's the heist, a public company, quietly emptied by the family that ran it. To feel the size of the betrayal, you have to see what was betrayed. Go back to 1952 to a small town in the Pennsylvania mountains called Powdersport. John Rigas was the son of Greek immigrants. a man who'd bust tables as a boy and come home from the war to build something. With his brother Gus, he bought into the brand new business of cable television for a few $100s. They named the company Adelphia, the Greek word for brothers. And then, for decades, they did one thing relentlessly. They bought. System by system, town by town, borrowing heavily to swallow small suburban cable operators everyone else ignored. By the late 1990s, Adelphia had become one of the 5 or 6 biggest cable companies in America, reaching more than 5.5 million customers across more than 30 states. From a mountain town franchise to a coast-to-coast empire, still run out of a small town most Americans had never heard of, by a family everyone there trusted. And John Rigas played the part of the beloved patriarch perfectly. He gave to his town, to his church, to charities. In 1997, he bought the Buffalo Sabres, an entire NHL hockey team, and installed his son Timothy to help run it. To the outside world, the Rigases were a great American immigrant success story, the family that built an empire and stayed humble. That image, that respectability, was exactly what made the fraud so hard to see. No one suspects the man everyone loves, but underneath, there was a line that should never blur, and the family had blurred it completely. Because the Rigases still controlled Adelphia, and because their private companies were tangled up with it, the family seems to have stopped seeing a difference between the public company's money and their own. And once that line is gone, everything the SEC later charged becomes possible. The hidden loans, the golf course, the condos. The empire and the family had merged into one checkbook. It was only a matter of time before someone looked inside. And someone did. The whole thing came apart not with a raid, but with a single sentence on a routine call. In late March 2002, on an earnings call, Adelphia quietly disclosed that around $2.3 billion in debt, co-borrowed with the Rigas family entities, had not been on its books. Analysts froze. That one admission told Wall Street that everything else in the numbers might be a lie too. And the market did what the market does. It ran. What happened next was almost vertical. On the 26th of March, Adelphia stock closed at $20.39. Just over 2 months later, on the 3rd of June, it closed at 79 cents, and NASDAQ delisted it. A company worth billions gone to almost nothing in about 10 weeks. And on the 25th of June, 2002, Adelphia, one of the biggest cable companies in America, filed for bankruptcy. It would rank among the largest bankruptcies in United States history. And then came the images no one who saw them forgot. In the summer of 2002, federal agents arrested John Rigas, the 77-year-old founder, along with his sons Timothy and Michael and 2 other executives. The beloved patriarch led away in handcuffs. On the day of the arrests, the NHL seized control of his hockey team. The great immigrant success story had become one of the defining corporate perp walks of an era of scandal. He resigned as chief executive. The empire he'd spent 50 years building was no longer his. The trial ran into 2004, and it ended the way the receipts demanded. John Rigas and his son Timothy, who had been Adelphia's chief financial officer, were convicted of conspiracy, securities fraud, and bank fraud. The next year, the sentences came down. John Rigas, then 80 years old, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Timothy got 20, a father and a son going to prison together for looting the company they'd built and run. And here is the detail that makes Adelphia different from the Enrons and the WorldComs it's usually grouped with. Those executives cashed out. They sold their stock and walked away rich while everyone else lost everything. The Rigases didn't. As one writer in the New York Times put it, the strange thing was that they never sold their shares. It looked less like a plan to defraud and get out, and more like a family desperate to hide the truth, convinced they could paper over the hole before anyone noticed, and paying for their lifestyle out of the company in the meantime. That doesn't make it legal. It arguably makes it sadder. A man who genuinely believed he could fix it, right up until the handcuffs. John Rigas served roughly 9 years. In 2016, terminally ill with cancer, he was granted compassionate release. He went home to the same small town where it all began, and he died there in 2021 at the age of 96. A convicted felon, his name attached forever to the empire he built and the fraud that destroyed it. As for Adelphia itself, its remains were carved up. In 2006, its cable systems were sold to Comcast and Time Warner for $17.6 billion. The company vanished. The customers barely noticed, but the case did not go quietly, because Adelphia didn't just take down one family. It arrived in the same 18 months as Enron and WorldCom, 3 enormous frauds back-to-back that shattered the idea that a public company's books could simply be trusted. And that shock helped force a new law, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which made executives personally certify their financial statements under threat of prison. Every time a chief executive signs off on their company's numbers today, there's a little of Adelphia in that signature. So what's the real lesson of the piggy bank? It isn't that a villain got greedy. It's how ordinary the crossing of the line can look from the inside. A man builds something real. His family controls it. Slowly, the company's money and the family's money become the same money, and the theft doesn't feel like theft. Because who's being hurt? The answer, of course, is everyone else. The shareholders, the employees, the town that trusted him. The most dangerous fraud isn't the one committed by an obvious crook. It's the one committed by a man everyone admires, who convinced himself he was allowed. Because the Rigases weren't the only ones who mistook a company for a personal treasury. There's another one, a chief executive so brazen he spent company money on a $6,000 shower curtain and a $2 million birthday party on a Mediterranean island, all while looting hundreds of millions. That story is on screen right now.